All right, Alexander. I'll tell you right now from here, from Cyprus, the euro is things are just getting worse and worse with regards to the euro dollar. I think in the UK, the pound sterling is not doing any better. I mean, we're going from bad to worst almost like on a daily basis. Right when you think it can't get any worse, it gets worse.
Yes,
What's going on
absolutely.
in the UK right now
Well,
with the
what is
economy?
going on in the UK is that Kwarteng and Truss had a meeting with various officials who needed to be reassured that there was some kind of plan to bring this financial crisis under control. All of those people left that meeting after 45 minutes, convinced that there is no plan. And there clearly isn't, because one of the most interesting things, one of the most extraordinary facts about this story is that Truss and Kwarteng are barely visible at the moment. Over the last couple of days, it's like they've disappeared into a bunker somewhere. So the result was, almost as soon as that meeting ended, we saw sterling start to crash again. And all the indications are that the only thing that's holding anything together at the moment is the fact that the Bank of England is continuing to buy £5 billion of government bonds every day to keep the government bond market, the gilts market, running. And there's a growing sense in Britain that the economy is on the brink of total collapse. And I mean total collapse. There's real worries about what will happen on the 14th of October, when the Bank of England is supposed to stop its bond buying program, if it does. And one effect is that the latest opinion polls are now putting Labour 33% ahead of the Conservatives. 33%. So, most prime ministers have a honeymoon period with the voters. this prime minister and the chancellor have managed the diametric extreme opposite. And there's now rumours that within the Conservative Party, there are voices saying that Kwarteng certainly must go, but that Truss should go also. So whether that will bring order to this chaos, I can't really see why it would.
Well, what does this all mean then? Snap elections, or does Kwarteng go, or do they ride this out for the next, I don't know, 6 weeks, say, or
I don't think
something
they
like
can ride.
that?
You know,
I just want to
I
say I heard Liz Truss give an interview, I think, to Jake Tapper of CNN. She is very, very unimpressive. I mean,
absolutely.
very, very unimpressive. Um, you know,
I mean, I don't think.
this is this is a train wreck. Yeah.
It is a complete train wreck. To be honest, I mean, I don't think they got 6 weeks. I would be. I mean, I have to say, I think there's a fair chance that Kwarteng will be out of number 11 before the end of the week. I mean, I think, I said not the end of the week, with today's Friday, but next week at some point, maybe even the beginning of next week, he could be out. If Kwarteng goes, then Truss herself is on borrowed time, because I don't really see how she's going to be able to pull it together. Maybe she'll be pushed to resign, in which case presumably we get Sunak. But what could Sunak do? You see, this is the trouble. And if you look, you talked about the euro at the start of this program. You're absolutely right. The euro's collapsing. I mean, the pound is collapsing faster than the euro, but we shouldn't overlook the fact that the euro is falling as well. And we've just had a disastrous inflation readout from the EU. I mean, inflation is now, I think, literally on the tip of touching double figures in the eurozone, in the EU. And that, by the way, is almost certainly an underestimate anyway. And in Germany, inflation is probably higher than it is in the overall euro and EU area. So things are falling apart. And yesterday, Olaf Scholz, even as he criticises Truss and the British for overspending, what does he do? He unveils another massive spending package. So I don't know what they're going to do. I think that before very long, and this is the real danger, this is all going to start to affect the operations of the financial system. I think we will probably see this very bizarre policy that we see in Britain of interest rates rising and QE going on at the same time. In other words, you're trying to conduct a monetary tightening and a monetary loosening at one and the same time, which makes absolutely no sense. But I suspect that's what they're going to start to do in the Eurozone area. And the only outcome of that is higher inflation. You can't, I mean, that you're going to have higher inflation at the same time as a recession. I mean, we're not talking about, stagflation. Tom Longo explained to me that stagflation is a situation where you have a recession and inflation at the same time. Well, we're going to get much worse than that. We're going to get a very severe recession indeed, with very high inflation indeed, because you can't be loose and tight at one and the same time. The tightness is going to hit the productive sides of the economy, both in Europe and in Britain. It's going to make it much more difficult for businesses to operate. It's going to hit borrowers very badly. It's going to crash the housing markets and the property markets and probably the stock market. But at the same time, if you're continuing to pump money into the economy at the same time through more QE, then it's very difficult to see, given the inflation fire that is already raging, how that cannot result in ever higher inflation. Now, at what point this whole thing stops, what has to happen to bring it to a stop, I don't know. But perhaps you can now start to see the logic of blowing up the pipelines, because given that this is the cycle that we're in, the option that there might have been was to try and do a deal with the Russians, get the energy moving again, try at least to stabilize the energy markets, reverse all the sanctions on gas and on oil as well. But after the Nord Stream sabotage, that's much more difficult.
Yeah, only one direction now, and that's down the drain.
That's
But
down
is it me, or do you also get the sense that the collapse is happening much faster than I would have anticipated? I mean, we're just finishing September when we're recording this video, so maybe this video will go up on the 1st of October. I'll see, but we're still not really even into the thick of winter.
No, I mean, temperatures
And
are...
it just seems like it seems like this collapse is going very, very fast. I don't know. Do you get that sense?
Yes, I absolutely get that sense. And I mean, you also need to look at what's happening in the financial markets, which I know you follow more carefully than I do. But clearly, things are going very bad and much faster than I would have anticipated. And that is a surprise to me. I personally thought that things would start to fall apart around late February, early March. I never said this before, but that was my sort of sense looking at the logistics of this. Well, I suspect what's happening is that people are looking forward and are saying to themselves, well, things are falling apart now. Again, maybe they're falling apart. Why wait till February and March? Why not take your money out now if you possibly can? And we're now starting to see a cumulative cycle begin to build. I'm going to add something else. There is no leadership from the one place which historically, in times of economic crisis, has given leadership, and that is the United States. In previous periods of economic crisis since the Second World War, people have looked to Washington for a lead. You know, the president has called together European leaders. There's been meetings of the G20, meetings of the G7. There's been talks among central bankers. There's usually something hammered out, something agreed. Well, this president doesn't know whether a congressperson is alive or dead, doesn't seem to have any awareness of the scale of the problems, is in denial about them. His Treasury Secretary is still talking about price caps on oil, which nobody takes seriously. So, I mean, and the Federal Reserve Board, it's about the only institution that still seems to be functioning, is now fixated on trying to control inflation in the United States itself, which is, after all, its job. But of course, doing what it is doing, it's deepening the crisis everywhere else too.
Vice President doesn't know the difference between South and North Korea.
North Korea, exactly. Yeah.
Leadership? What leadership? Instead
What
of
leadership?
trying to fix this problem, perhaps talking to Russia, they're blowing up pipelines. I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah.
they're blowing up pipelines, or
Absolutely.
they're coming out with an 8th round of sanctions packages. 8.
Yeah. 8.
They've done 7, and none of them have worked.
Yeah.
So their bright idea is to go for number 8.
Yeah. Exactly.
Leadership. This feels like it's a mass suicide,
Yes. Yes.
and not of the elite. It's like the elite are pushing everyone else to fall apart.
I know. I mean, what do they say? Things, that famous poem by Yeats, things fall apart, the centre cannot hold, the best lack all conviction, and the worst are filled with passionate intensity. And that's, I'm afraid, where we are at the moment. I mean, things do look like they're falling apart. And coming back to your question, which I've already answered, much faster than I would have anticipated. I'm going to say something. I mean, you made the same point to me. I've never forgotten this back in the summer of 2020 about what would happen in the United States if Biden was elected, that, things would start to fall apart there. And again, I basically agreed. But again, not at the speed that we're seeing. I mean, this is turbocharging disaster.
And there's not one person outside of Orban. Orban's the only person that is saying stop. No one else is saying stop. Everyone is going along with this. Everyone. All countries in the collective West. Every single country.
Yes.
Except for Hungary.
Yes, because Hungary has a leader and the rest don't. It's as simple as that. I mean, Hungary, Orban, I mean, he may not be the perfect leader, but he is a leader. He does feel a sense of responsibility towards his own people. I am now becoming more and more convinced, by the way, that sometime in the winter, Hungary is going to bail out entirely, and we could see it leaving the EU and perhaps even NATO.
Do you think they should? Objectively.
Well, objectively, why not? I mean, certainly the EU. What is it? What good is the EU to them at the moment? All right, they can travel, they can move around the Schengen zone and all that,
but can't even do that anymore. You
they can't even do that anymore,
Alexander. You can't even travel around the Schengen anymore.
Yes.
Go on. I just wanted to say.
I struggle to see objectively what value Hungary gets from its continued membership of the EU, given that it still has its own currency, it still has room to jump off ship. And that's what I think it will probably do. I think it's, well, I say probably. I mean, I think that's what it's very likely going to do.
Okay, we will leave it there. The Duran.locals.com and Duran Shop. 10% off. Use the code. Good day. Take care.